The cafeteria smelled faintly of bleach and fried potatoes, a mixture that clung stubbornly to the walls no matter how many times the janitor passed his mop across the tile. Daniel Hayes didn't mind. He'd grown used to the scent, to the rhythm of sweeping floors while laughter and footsteps echoed above him. Life had pressed him into corners, but he learned long ago that dignity wasn't in the job title, it was in how you carried yourself. At 38, Daniel had the kind of hands that told stories of labor. Calloused palms, a scar on his right knuckle from an old construction mishap, and wrists that never quite healed after years of heavy lifting. But when his little girl, Emma, reached for those hands, they became softer than silk. Emma was 8. Wide-eyed with a gap-toothed smile and a voice that carried the sincerity only children knew how to wield. She had her mother's chestnut hair, though her mother had left long ago, leaving Daniel to play both parents in a world that didn't always forgive single fathers. He didn't complain. Emma was his reason, his anchor, and every dollar he made sweeping floors went into keeping her clothed, fed, and smiling. That Tuesday evening, his shift at the office building stretched longer than usual. A corporate dinner was happening on the top floor, a gathering of executives and their guests, with waiters in crisp black uniforms ferrying trays of hors d'oeuvre under crystal chandeliers. Daniel worked silently, invisible as always, his mop weaving figure eights across the lobby. Emma sat quietly in the corner, her small backpack slung over one shoulder. Inside was her homework, a worn notebook, and the carefully packed dinner she and Daniel had prepared that morning: 2 sandwiches, an apple, and a thermos of homemade soup. Normally, Emma would have eaten at home, but the long shift meant she had to tag along. Daniel glanced at her as he wrung out his mop. "You okay, Peanut?" She smiled, tugging her knees to her chest. "I'm fine, Daddy. I'll eat when you sit down." It was the kind of patience that both warmed and broke him. He nodded, promising himself he'd take a short break soon so they could share the meal. But fate had other plans. An elderly couple walked into the lobby, moving slowly, their steps uncertain. The man leaned heavily on a cane, his suit frayed at the cuffs, while the woman clutched a handbag that looked decades old. Their eyes darted nervously around the grandeur of the building, as though they didn't belong. Daniel noticed the way the woman rubbed her stomach, the slight tremble in her hands. He'd seen hunger before, in his own mirror. He set the mop aside and walked over. "Evening, folks. Can I help you with something?" The old man hesitated. "We're a broken bar. We were told there might be a community dinner here tonight for seniors." Daniel frowned gently. There was no such dinner, or just the corporate event upstairs, invitation only. His heart twisted. They looked so fragile, so out of place. He realized they'd probably come hoping for a meal, maybe misinformed by someone. Emma stood, clutching her backpack. She'd heard too. Daniel glanced at her, then back at the couple. "I'm sorry, sir. There isn't a community dinner." Beauty. He paused, words catching. His gaze flicked to Emma's backpack. He swallowed hard. But I do have some food." Emma's eyes widened, but not with protest. She pulled the backpack off her shoulders and handed it to her father. Daniel knelt down, opened it, and carefully laid out the contents. 2 sandwiches, an apple, a thermos. He pushed it toward the couple. "Please, take it. It's not much, but it's warm." The woman's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the meal with trembling fingers. The man tried to protest, but his hunger betrayed him. "Bless you," the woman whispered, her voice cracking. Daniel smiled softly. "Eat. Don't worry about it." Behind them, at the far end of the lobby, a woman stood silently, watching. Her black heels clicked softly as she approached, but neither Daniel nor Emma noticed her at first. Her presence carried weight, commanding, yet strangely human in that moment. Her name was Claire Donovan, CEO of Donovan Enterprises, one of the most influential business leaders in the city. She was there to attend the executive dinner upstairs but had stepped down early to take a private call. That's when she'd witnessed the entire exchange, an underpaid janitor giving away his daughter's dinner without hesitation. Claire was used to seeing ambition, greed, calculated moves, rarely kindness. What she saw unsettled her in the best way. Emma tugged Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, you can have my apple. I'm not that hungry." Daniel's throat tightened. He hugged her quickly, then stood, resuming his mop as though nothing unusual had happened. He didn't know he was being watched. Claire stayed quiet, her mind racing. A janitor's act of compassion had left an imprint on her heart she couldn't shake. The dinner upstairs glittered with wealth and power, but as she joined the table of executives, her thoughts weren't on quarterly reports or profit margins. They were on a little girl's backpack, a father's selflessness, and two strangers fed because kindness outweighed hunger. Over the next week, Claire couldn't let it go. She discreetly asked her assistant to find out who the janitor was. Daniel Hayes, 38, single father, struggled financially, yet with a spotless employment record and no complaints from staff. She made a decision, one that surprised even her. The following Friday, Daniel arrived at work to find an envelope taped to his locker. Inside was a handwritten note. "Sometimes the smallest act of kindness changes lives. I saw what you did. Come to the executive office after your shift." ICD. Daniel frowned, confused, half worried. Was he in trouble? Emma was with him again that evening. "Maybe they want to say thank you," she offered with childlike certainty. After his shift, Daniel nervously climbed to the top floor, Emma's small hand in his. The secretary ushered them in immediately, as though expected. Claire Donovan sat behind a vast oak desk, her tailored suit crisp, her expression unreadable. But when her eyes fell on Emma, her sternness softened. "Mr. Hayes," she began, standing to greet him. "I watched you give your daughter's meal to strangers last week. You didn't know anyone was watching. You didn't hesitate. That says more about your character than any copyright copyright ever could." Daniel shifted uneasily. "Mom, yeah, broken bar, they needed it more than us." "It wasn't anything special," Emma piped up. "It was special to them, Daddy." Claire smiled faintly. She turned to Emma. "You're a wise young lady." She looked back at Daniel. "I want to offer you something. Not charity opportunity. We run a program for community outreach, and I need someone with heart, someone who understands people. I'd like you to oversee it. The position pays 3 times what you're making now, with full benefits for your daughter." Daniel's jaw went slack. "Yeah, broken bar, I'm a janitor, Mom." "I don't have here." "You have what matters," Claire interrupted firmly. "Integrity, compassion. Those can't be taught. The rest, we'll train you for." Emma squeezed her father's hand so tightly he nearly winced. Her eyes sparkled with hope. Daniel blinked, torn between disbelief and humility. "Why me?" Claire's voice softened. "Because I was hungry once too, and no one helped me. Watching you reminded me of the humanity I'd forgotten exists. The world needs people like you in places where decisions are made." Silence hung thick in the room, broken only by Emma whispering, "Daddy, say yes." Tears stung Daniel's eyes. Unbidden, he nodded slowly. "Yes, thank you." From that night forward, life shifted. Daniel transitioned into his new role, awkward at first but buoyed by sincerity. He organized food drives, community meals, programs for seniors, so the very people he'd helped in the lobby. His story spread quietly through the company, then beyond. Employees who once walked past him without notice now sought his counsel. Emma thrived too, her father's pride lifting her spirits. She told anyone who would listen that her dad was proof kindness mattered. As for Claire, she changed as well. The hardened CEO who once measured life in profits now measured it in people. She credited a janitor's choice, a sandwich, an apple, a thermos sherader to remind her that leadership without compassion was empty. The old couple returned months later, this time attending a community dinner hosted by Donovan Enterprises. They didn't recognize Daniel at first in his new suit, standing confidently at the podium. But when they did, the woman gasped and clutched her husband's hand. Daniel saw them, smiled, and said into the microphone, "This is why we're here. Because no one should have to wonder where their next meal comes from." And sometimes, The smallest act of giving can start a ripple that changes everything. The room erupted in applause. Emma beamed in the front row, clapping so hard her palms turned pink. Claire stood in the back, watching with quiet pride, knowing she'd made the right choice. And somewhere deep inside Daniel, the janitor who once thought his life amounted to little, realized he'd been wrong all along. His value wasn't in the mop he pushed but in the heart he carried. A single meal had changed lives. A single act had rewritten futures. And in a world too often hardened by greed, kindness had found a way to shine.